Hello everybody and welcome to this week's auction video ending anywhere between Friday the 24th and Sunday the 26th. This will be the last week of January's auctions. I suspect that as tax time rolls around here pretty soon that people might start throwing more animals up because typically you see a surge in buying for some magical reason. I don't know. It's almost as if everybody overpaid on their taxes and are suddenly getting a big check back. But without wasting any more time, there's some pretty good stuff up here this week, starting off with this Desert Ghost Het Zebra. It does have a very high starting price, but there's a reason for that, and it's because I don't think anyone has hit the Desert Ghost Zebra yet. Zebra is a really potent morph. It has a lot going for it, and this is the ingredients you need to make it. If you just get yourself a Zebra male or a Het Zebra male with Desert Ghost in there as well, kind of go head to head, but on the Desert Ghost you're always guaranteed. You could do that, or if you wanted to bite the bullet and get yourself a Zebra male, which is probably for the best, and given how much money you might stand to make on a return for that sort of an animal, it might be worth it. You could get that and get it to be Het Desert Ghost for the male if you can source one, but there's a lot to love about that morph with Zebra, and you can kind of see zebras have a definite look to them. Even the hets. The hets don't look like normals in any way, shape, or form. Yes, this is a Desert Ghost, a visual one at that, so you're going to have that nice, cleaner type color, but the pattern and whatnot on pretty much any zebra is definitely funky. But the visual zebra, there's no mistaking it, and that's what this looks like. And keep in mind that this is just a pastel zebra, so zebra kind of cleans up and brightens up as is. So just imagine this with Desert Ghost on top of it. It would be absolutely electric. You'd have it very cleaned up. I think that these blacks would be pretty darn stark black. The yellows would pop and be a lot more clean. There'd be a ton of contrast in this animal. So that's the kind of stuff that you're rolling the dice on when you get something like this. Your chances are very good if you get an animal like this. And the funny thing is in an auction like this, it's tough to say if something like this will sell here because people sometimes are not looking forward, and maybe they might not have the capital to put on something like this, and two, they might not think much of it just looking at it. They're not seeing the potential underneath to create a Desert Ghost Zebra. And at that, you know, you could probably get the male to have a few extra genetics in there, like the Pastel, which everybody wants the dog on, but would look very good in this combo. A really good opportunity. I don't know if anybody's got $2,000 or so to throw at it, but it would make some really good animals if you could hit the Desert Ghost Zebra for sure. Again, just think about this, but starker blacks, cleaner, brighter, what's not to love? Next up would be this Firefly Het Clown girl. Firefly is the combination of fire and pastel. Always looks really nice. Another one there, you can see it's an adult and it still looks like this. They kind of keep this nice creamy looking color. They definitely are a little bit different as babies. Their blacks and yellows stand out a little bit more. There's less bleeding, but they still look great as adults, quite frankly. This would not be for everyone, no doubt, because some people would be beyond this if they're into bigger breeding projects and stuff like that. But if you're looking to get started and you want a cool breeder that's going to be able to make some Firefly clowns, it'd be a very nice one, and I think you'd be able to get it for a very good price. I don't know how much more it will go up, but I suspect it will be a very reasonable price, quite frankly, and the shipping's not too bad down there either. I noticed here it said she was bred to a stranger clown and laid eggs in June. Wouldn't that be something to have her retain sperm? Now, that's a rare incident to have her retain and actually still lay some stranger clowns later for you. That's not common, obviously, so don't get your hopes up, but it would be a very, very welcome surprise to get some stranger clowns out of this. Either way, I think it's a good one for someone who's just getting started and wants to experiment and kind of get their feet wet and get the knowledge of breeding under their hands before they end up investing a lot more money into the hobby. This would be a really good one to do that with, and it could still serve some cool use for you and make some cool animals. Similar to our first one, we're dealing with a pretty good amount of power here, but yet no reserve on this one. The only difference is this one is not visual for Desert Ghost. Instead, it is double het, and that would be this Pastel Mojave double het Monsoon Desert Ghost. And believe it or not, the Monsoon Desert Ghost has been hit. I only know of one, and maybe there's more out there, but this is the Desert Ghost Monsoon right here, brought to you by Canova. It is nice, clean, bright. It will age very well. I bet you that these patterns will stay like this, if not maybe even more emboldened. I think the only thing you can do here is to maybe even make it darker. Blackhead might might be able to achieve that amongst other genetics, but that would be amazing to have that sort of level of contrast being brought out by the Desert Ghost as well. I'm already thinking a step ahead here though. You can kind of see here the difference between a Monsoon and a Desert Ghost Monsoon right there. It is very nice, it is very bright, and its contrast is incredible, and that's what you're playing with right here. From Brock Wagner Reptiles, a very trustable breeder. Mojave has been put into Monsoon for a while, so we know it works very well with it. Pastel and Desert Ghost work very well together, so I think this would be a very nice one. The color on this girl here is already really cool. Almost some purple in the head a little bit there. Just some really nice color, crazy pattern. A lot of this I think is the Monsoon. Het bleeding in some influence there. Monsoon does have some visual markers, and everything I've seen seems to indicate that. There's a lot of pattern jumping over the top of the animal. Typically a Monsoon, a Pastel even, is going to have these keyholes, kind of like you're seeing right back here in the back of the snake. Just these one little keyholes right here or right here. But there is a lot of crazy wonkiness going around here. This is nuts. The pattern on this just is kind of cool just by itself. No reserve on this, being a girl at that. That's kind of where you want your hets to be if you're going to work a het instead of a visual, is in the girl in my opinion, because you get the male to be visual. Now, are you going to get a visual Monsoon Desert Ghost to put to that? Let's face it, probably not. But either way, you either get a double het or maybe you get a Desert Ghost Het Monsoon to put to this girl here. That way your odds of getting Desert Ghost are much higher. And when you don't, you'll at least know on that morph whether it is het or not. And then the Monsoon, you'd have a 1 in 4 chance of hitting that as well, going het to het. It's a way to stand out, that's for sure. You can make some incredible hatchlings with this. Like I said, this is just the beginning. It's already very nice and bright. While you're at it, if you're gonna get yourself a Desert Ghost Het Monsoon, which might be the more affordable option for also getting your odds up at the same time, kind of balancing those, why not get something with a little bit more in there? Like I said, maybe try to find something with a little bit of a darker gene like Blackhead. That's the way I would go anyways if I was working that and I wanted to try to improve something that's already as nice as this. Moving right along to one we showed in our live stream on Tuesday would be this Fire Pastel Enchi Pinstripe Lace 100% Het Clown and Het Pied. There's a whole lot going on here. Just the animal by itself is pretty power packed. The only downside being that it is not visual in any way. But again, like I said, being the hets and the girl is not a bad thing, and quite frankly, getting yourself a clown pied male is not the most expensive thing in the world here, and you could probably get some extra genetics in there for not much, if not nearly the exact same, depending on what you're going for. But the big one here is the lace. The lace being in this is kind of a game changer, and we showed off that lace pied again from Canova, and you can kind of see a lot of the awesomeness that it does. This just radiates like a erupting volcano, like lava rushing down it. It's crazy. It's amazing. It's beautiful, and it is incredibly vibrant. So this is even more. Like I said, you have Fire, Pastel. Pastel will work good with this. Enchi and Pinstripe. Enchi always goes good with those pieds. It'll bring more pattern in there. But then the Pinstripe too. I honestly thought maybe Pinstripe often kind of creates more solid blocks of color. What if you could just create it with just this nice, beautiful orange? That would be incredible. If you could get this animal like that, that might be incredibly unique. It'd be kind of how people seek these panda pieds in a way. How they want all just black and white, but instead it would just be all orange, like a bright orange and white. And that'd be so incredible. I don't know if for sure that's the way it would come about, but either way, you would be working with an absolute beauty on your hands. Everything you make would be amazing. But if you could hit that with some of these genes, even that lace clown pied with anything here, or even some more stuff you're introducing from there from the male, you would undoubtedly be creating amazing animals. Next would be this Hurricane Confusion Redstripe Yellowbelly Het Clown. There's a lot of interest in this one, and there is still a reserve price that has not yet been met. I've said it many times before, but I usually recommend people bid up to where they're comfortable. So maybe you're comfortable at 1,000, for example. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just saying maybe that's where you're comfortable. But don't just place 1,000, because maybe this ends at 800. I usually recommend kind of walking it up in about $25 increments until the reserve price drops off, which maybe if that's at 800 or so, then you can stop right there. If you reach your $1,000 limit in this scenario and it still does not drop off that reserve price, you can just stop bidding. And if nobody else takes that baton and runs, then the auction will just become null and void, and nobody will owe anybody anything. But let's just get into the animal here. So obviously this is not a visual visual clown. If it was a visual clown, I do not think it would be for sale, quite frankly, because this is very, very powerful. Confusion clowns go for a lot. I see them go for $800-900 on these auctions. Now mix in all these other amazing genetics and you're definitely talking. Like I said, I don't typically like the males to have the hets in them because I'm breeding them to multiple things, and obviously I want to increase my chances that clown is passing along. And if it's a visual, it's always passing one copy along. Here, it's only 50-50. So if I breed it to a het, well, I'm not guaranteed anything. However, in some cases, I think it's very reasonable to make an exception, especially when you're dealing with chances like this to make something extraordinary. This is already an amazing looking animal. If you had hit the visual clown on this, you are sitting pretty. There's no doubt on that. So usually what I say is you keep this animal, work it into your collection where you can, and you try to hit the visual version of this. Obviously, maybe adding a little bit more to the mix when you're breeding it from your females, but all you really want to do is try to get as many visual clowns as possible to breed this to, so that you can try to hit the visual version of this. Once you do that and the others are raised up and you are now working with a visual, you can then move on from this one and give someone else the exact same opportunity that you have done to create that awesome animal as well. There's a decent amount of weight on this actually as well, so not breeder ready by any means, but it's very well started. If you can beat the reserve price and you want an amazing animal that eventually you're going to be able to create some incredible things with, this would not be a bad one as long as you can beat that reserve price. Another one here from Aura Reptiles would be this Hypo pied 100% het clown. Obviously you already know kind of where we're going with this, and that's to hit the triple het. If you wanted to know what a triple het would look like, this is it. This also has a het DG in it, which that wouldn't affect the look of this or the phenotype, but you can already see it's already an outstandingly amazing animal, and that's what you're coming close to creating here. Get yourself a female that is maybe clown pied het hypo or some sort of iteration of that, so that you're working the hets kind of against each other. That way you're always guaranteed to hit a few things, and when you're not, you know, you're always getting hets. So in that regard, what I just said, getting a clown pied het hypo, everything would be pied, and then everything that wasn't visual would be het for what it didn't meet. So you'd have het clowns or het pieds at worst, but often you'd hit those visuals and you have a decent chance of hitting that triple het. And again, those prices have come down on clown pied, so you could probably work a few of these different ones. So maybe you get yourself a clown pied girl with het hypo. Maybe you also get yourself a clown hypo het pied, so you kind of just work it in two different directions, and you can kind of increase your odds. But while you're at it, why not add a few other things in there, like I always say to do, that's not crazy expensive, I don't think, to add a couple different genetics in there to maybe spice it up and make it look even better than the one I just showed you right here. Moving right along, we're going to show you a few of these that have the acid combination in them. Now, we already technically showed you what many people think to be the acid, and that's one with confusion, this hurricane confusion that we showed you just a little bit ago. And many people say that they are the exact same, and I do believe that myself, but I would definitely like to see the science spell that out in a much more clear fashion. That being said, there's no doubt in the fact that acid confusion, and I believe it's static, are all amazing. Static is another one that they think to be the same. I do think it will go for a bit more, but not being visual. Sometimes I see these slip through the cracks, so to speak. But I do foresee a little bit of a bidding war near the end here, tomorrow around 7 or 8 when this ends. Another one here, but a little bit of size to it actually, would be this Pastel Yellowbelly acid het clown. So if you want some of the work taken out of it for you that was put to grow these out, and on top of that add a few more genetics in there, this might be a good one too. But if you notice, the bids are already much higher, and this one still has most of its time left. Still a really good opportunity if you want to start making acid clowns much quicker. I mean, I would argue you probably got about a year's time taken off to get her ready for you, at least, given how big she is. Something I didn't mention about acids and confusions and such like that is they often have pattern on their belly, which is really unique to them. I don't really see it all that much in ball pythons, and definitely not to the extent that you see on these. Some of them practically have hognose bellies, especially the acid or confusion clowns. Here's another one here. It's going to go for probably a little bit cheaper as well, because this one is a het clown, but also a boy at that. This acid fire het clown might be a good way for someone on a budget to get into that project by skipping the visual clown and trying to make it yourself. Again, not the most ideal route, but if this is all your budget allows for, it's still a really nice one to do. All you really need is a visual clown girl, and you can start creating the acid clowns. Eventually you would probably move on from this one after you've created your visual male and then growing him up to size. So I would probably recommend getting something with leopard, a leopard clown girl, because acid and leopard, they pair very well together because they kind of do similar things, but leopard kind of boldens those colors too, and they just work very well together. It's like they compound on top of each other and create these amazing animals. And if you're wondering kind of what I was talking about there, well, here you go. Acid or confusion clowns are absolutely bonkers. The sort of stuff they do to the heads, it's like a starry type pattern. You think that clowns already have amazing head patterns, but they do even more. And then this belly, the sides, the colors, everything about them are just incredible. And you can see what I mean by getting the leopard in there too, because the leopard's in this one and it just looks extraordinary. The bellies essentially remind me almost exactly of how a hognose belly is, with its cool pattern too. So lots to love with confusion or acid clowns, and this is the sort of stuff that you could be making with any of these animals right here. Speaking about hognoses, we're going to take a brief break from ball pythons to talk about a couple of them. As it stands right now, making this video, these are the hognoses available on auction. As always, there's not as many, usually about a half a page, maybe up to a page, but there's always something, and there's always something good, I've noticed. Starting off with this proven breeder, extreme red albino western hognose. This one's really nice. I love albino. It's probably my favorite morph right now. The extreme red is something a little unique that we don't see too much in ball pythons anyway, and that is a polygenic trait. It's something that will always pass along whether you hit the albino or not. They just look a little bit nicer, a little bit more tinged orange, I suppose. They definitely pop a lot more, and I would argue that, quite frankly, they're very orange. Let's face it. You know, it says extreme red, but there are certain scales on here that I think could be argued that are dancing with the actual color of red, albeit a more orangey one, but I think that they are very, very close, much closer than we see in often very many ball pythons, quite frankly. Which, let's face it, we often say rusty colors are more reddish. But if you're talking about color theory, oranges are red. And if you're curious about that, you can actually watch our video about colors in ball pythons. Regardless of all that, it is still an incredible looking animal and a good one to get if you wanted to start breeding into that project right away, if you can beat the reserve price, which it does say is a low reserve. So, you know, who knows? Just bid it to where you're comfortable, I suppose. And another one here would be this albino exantic, otherwise known as a snow. So it takes a combination of the exantic gene and the albino and creates this animal here, which the other albino, you can argue, has kind of reddish coming in on them, but I don't think you could argue the pink here. Yeah, it's a lighter pink, but they are pink. That's what I'm seeing, is a pink snake, pink and white snake, and that's really cool with just these ruby red eyes on top of that. You can see there's a good amount of interest here, and it's still got just under 2 days as of recording this, so it will continue to go up. If you want to work snows in hognoses, that's a really good one to pick, because they are always going to get a lot of attention, and they deserve it, because I mean, you literally have a pink snake. So that is awesome. Back into ball pythons from Get Morph BP would be this Fire Grail. And the Grail is a combination of clown and lavender albino. And I think that the lavender albino is a much better combination than the regular albinos, than the regular albino genetic with clown, because it just kind of pops a little bit more. The regular albino sometimes can bleed. There's some of them I have trouble right away identifying that it is even clown, other than the fact that it's just pure orangish and yellowish. You definitely can see it, but here it's pretty clear as day, and the contrast is amazing. You have a lot more difference in this contrast, because when they bleed out, it changes not from a two-toned yellow, but to a yellow and lavenderish snake. So it definitely keeps that contrast really, really nice. The fire helps brighten this animal up too as well, so it's almost like glowing. And that really helps with the head pattern on top of that, so it really stands out. Creates this awesome contrast. I absolutely love Grails. They are incredible. You can see from the bidding that they love them too. A little bit under 2 days left as of recording this, and already at that price. This one won't be gotten cheap, but it will still be a good deal. There's no doubt about that. One of my favorite genes, Blackhead, is up next with this Blackhead Yellowbelly Het Ultramel 50% HetClown. There's a good amount of potential here. Right off the bat, you would definitely want to send this in for a shed test for HetClown if you won this animal, because Ultramel clowns are outstanding. I might be a Monarch guy myself, but there is no doubt about that. On top of that, having Blackhead and Yellowbelly, two genetics that work just about well with everything, hitting a visual version of that would would be amazing. Even if it is just the Ultramel, would still be very, very nice. A girl like that, you'd be able to find some use for her regardless of whether she ends up as HetClown or not. And I think that this might go for a pretty fair price, quite frankly. It already has extraordinary looks with the combinations of the blackhead and the Yellowbelly. You can really see what it's going to bring to the table when it hits into that Ultramel as well. The blackhead works well with everything. You might think that since blackhead's a dark gene, it wouldn't work well with something that kind of lightens it up in the way that Ultramel does, but you would be very wrong. You can definitely see what I'm talking about right here with this blackhead Ultramel. The colors are absolutely incredible. That's why I will be working blackhead into my Monarch projects, because I'm definitely all about this as well. And that's the sort of stuff you'd be looking at. And that's not including the clown. If you could hit the clown version of this, whew, that would be amazing. Again, not even talking about the fact that the Yellowbelly's in there too. It's going to make it even better. Blackhead works very well with just about everything. It might be a dark morph, but it does not fight against lighter things. It works with them, and it creates amazing contrast. One of my favorite genetics out there. And this would make amazing animals with or without the clown, but definitely have your fingers crossed on this being HetClown. That would be outstanding. If you want to work Stranger, I often say come to the auctions, morph markets. When I first got into Strangers were very expensive. I mean, heck, even like 4 years ago, Strangers were 2,000 to 4,000 or something like that. Now they are still a decent price, but you can get Strangers for much more reasonable prices, and they can come with a lot of awesome things, like a lot of building blocks to make some amazing things. This one here on top of that is not just a normal one, is a Stranger Pastel, 100% het pied, possible HetClown, and then also possible Specter and Genex, which Genex is an enhancement gene. Specter is in the Yellowbelly family. So there's a lot going on here. The Pastel and the Stranger can kind of eat up what Specter would do, so I can definitely see why that might be difficult to see. I do think this looks exceptional though. Sometimes I find Stranger Pastels that I like, and sometimes I find ones that I would like to see without it. So it's interesting. This one is definitely one with that is amazing. It's very nice. The bright colors of the pastel are definitely helping this out, but I have a sneaking suspicion this could be Genex because of that as well. It definitely looks exceptional, let's just say that. On top of that being pied, you could obviously put this into your pied projects, but again, another one that you definitely want to send in for a shed test to RGI for that clown gene, because there's so many different avenues you could work with that. Not the most ideal being a male, you know, having those hets in there. But again, another one that if you want to work exceptional things, but you need to do it on a budget, this could be a good one to do that with. It does have a good amount of interest, so it will rise a bit, I imagine. How much I do not know, though. The Stranger does still pull in a good amount of interest. A lot of people really want to get into that project, especially now that it has become more affordable. The fact that this has some upside with some extra genetic in there and some hets does not hurt at all, for sure, but I still think this might end up for a good price, I would imagine. This one really caught my attention. This Pastel Blackhead Clown. Again, I already said how much I love the blackhead gene, but you can really see it at work here. This one also happens to be 50% het genetic stripe, possible black pastel, and orange dream on top of that. So there's a really lot to love about this. I definitely think this is more than Pastel Blackhead Clown. And if it ends up being het genetic stripe, you could be messing with the Kiki projects. In some ways, when I first saw this, it really reminded me of a much brighter, a little bit more washed out or browned out version of the Kraken. It really kind of has the same pattern, has a little bit of the same feel to it, just more washed out, not quite as exceptional, but it's still pretty darn nice. And a female at that, there's just a lot you could do with something like this. I definitely think it's more than just Pastel Blackhead Clown. Wouldn't be surprised at all to hear that it has Orange Dream in there, or maybe even that Black Pastel. Lots of cool ways you could go about this. Like I said, Blackhead Clowns are amazing. So I'd be very interested to see where this ends at. It'd be a very nice one to build up good clown projects. Blackhead is never something that you should ever turn down when the opportunity presents itself. It's an exceptional gene, like I mentioned earlier. It works very well within dark and light combos. Moving on to our final two here, starting off with this Mojave Lace Het Clown. Lace is one of those genetics that's very subtle, sometimes a little difficult to see by itself unless you have a trained eye, but it should not be ignored. It's another one of those genetics that are subtle by itself, but just make such incredible contributions when it's put into combinations. Mojave and lace here together honestly look very, very nice. The clown is where it's at though. I love lace clowns. They are very bright, very beautiful. Some of the most bright animals I've ever seen, and clean too. Lace is an enhancement type gene. I like to personally compare it often to Desert Ghost, but it's not just like Desert Ghost. Otherwise, what would be the point, right? It's almost like a little bit of a microdose there where it brightens the animal up, but it doesn't completely clean the animal up from its shadowing and stuff like that. Sometimes I think Desert Ghost can go a little overboard in a way, and it definitely helps. It makes an amazingly contrast animal where the colors are very defined and the contrast is very defined, but sometimes I really like the shadowing or the dirtiness or the chaos, all the granulation, and lace doesn't really mess with that. It just brightens the animal, it enhances the animal, and it keeps them very nice as they age. And it has an exceptional super form. The super lace, otherwise known as the white lace more affectionately, is incredible. Like I said, this would be a really good one. I think it's a very good price, quite frankly. I'm surprised that nobody has taken a stab at this. Yeah, again, it's nice to have them in visual form, but being a girl, you don't even really need much to start making lace clowns. You just need a clown boy, technically. But again, as I always say, why not go a little bit deeper and get some really nice males with some genetics in there, some powerhouses to add that into your project. Lace is a really good one. Another genetic that you should never turn your nose up at, and you should try to get into your collection to work it, because again, it works well with literally everything. And for our last one would be this unassuming Striker male. Striker is absolutely incredible. It's one that we work here, and I'm very happy and excited for the future of this project and just what we're doing with it, quite frankly. Striker really just by itself really jumbles up the pattern, kind of starts to stretch it out, and maybe sometimes bring some patterns that flow over the top of it. But really where it's at is the super form that people are going for in this. So much so that people have compared it to another genetic, which I'll get into here in a second. But Strikers kind of elongate the head, stretch it over the top, like I mentioned, and it kind of creates an almost zebra-like appearance there, which literally is what it says in the description there, which we find very interesting here, because there's often people who say it does the same thing. Whether it is the same thing or not, I couldn't say, and I couldn't honestly care less in anything other than curiosity. Some people are worried about that. I think it would be exceptionally awesome if they were actually allelic. Maybe not the same, but in the same family. Well, now, would that make Striker a recessive, or would it make Zebra a incomplete dominant? I, again, don't know or rightly care. I just want to make cool animals, and that's why I'm super excited about the Striker project. And just to show you the Super Striker, as you can see right here, it's very similar in many ways to the Zebra. Obviously, these are a little bit different morphs here, with one with the Pastel in there, and I think this one here has the Yellowbelly in there. You can definitely see the striping on the Zebra, where it kind of gets that name from, but again, you can kind of see that here on the Super Striker. They're very similar, and whether they're the same or not, I again could rightly care less. What I think is that they're outstanding, and that's what you're kind of playing with. You could start working Striker into many different things. I really think that this genetic, whether it's in Zebra or Striker, this look, this pattern has so much potential. We are very happy to be working it here. I have so many plans for it, it's not even funny. There's nothing that quite does it like this, and right now I feel like someone might look at this animal right here and let it go for a criminally low amount. So don't let that happen. Swoop in and take it up, because it is a beautiful, beautiful animal, and its super form is one of a kind. Hope you enjoyed this week's auction video. If you did get anything from the auctions, please let us know in the comments, whether it's from a past video or this video. If you haven't shouted it out yet, please let us know. We always love hearing it. If you wanted to learn more about some of the genetics we talked about today, you can actually check out videos on that here and here.